Hey, Chad at Turner's Warehouse, and today I'm going to do a video about resin casting with interference colors. Now, we use these primarily for knife scales and pen blanks, but this can be adapted to all types of applications. Many people use it for jewelry or river tables. A lot of people make those really cool spheres. So whatever you're making, you can use this. Interference colors or ghost colors differ from traditional micas because they all have a similar white look to them. The trick is when you mix these with a darker color, the color that's in the interference color comes out. So it allows you to create really cool tonal effects of like darks and lights, along with a bunch of different colors. For example, blue, green, red, violet, and gold. And that kind of gives you all these multi-tones without being a color in your face. So it's a really cool technique, and I want to show you how we do that. For this project, I'm going to use a variety of tools and materials. Let me show you what I'm going to use. First, I'm going to go with a pressure pot because I want my mold to go into the pot and get compressed for bubbles. I'm using Alumilite Resin. This is a slow cure urethane resin. I'm also going to use Stoner mold release in the mold. And then I'm going to use mica and dye. So I've got right here Alumilite black, and then I'm using 5 different interference colors of mica. For each one of those, I'm going to have a cup, paper cup, and a stir stick, and I'll show you why paper cup's important in just a minute. I've got my temperature gun, and of course my safety equipment, gloves, and glasses. Okay, so let's talk preparation. There's a few things you want to do before you even start mixing the resin. And that's, you want to get your safety equipment on, and you want to prep your mold and your pressure pot. So I'm putting my gloves on, I've got my glasses, and I've got my pressure pot ready. It's important to have the lid loose, and if you're using a mold rack, have that ready, because once you've mixed all this, you only have a certain amount of time. So 30 seconds to take the lid off might be a factor that you don't want to use. Next, you want to spray the mold with the Stoner mold release. Now, I've already done that because I didn't want to do it in the room here and have the cloud, so I did it outside, so that's been done. And then I've got my cups laid out. I lay them out with the color, that way I know exactly where I'm at and what I've done, and I can do it in a sequential fashion. Let's talk how much resin we're going to need for this mold. Now, there's a calculation you can do to figure out any mold or any amount you're pouring. And what you want to do is the length times the width times the depth, and then multiply that by 0.55. I'll say it again, length times width times depth by 0.55. Now this is a 5 3/4 by 5 1/4, and it's a 2-inch deep mold, although I don't want to cast the full 2 inches. So I'm only going to do a 7/8. And I'll tell you why this is important. If I go from 1 inch deep to 3/4 inch deep, only a 1/4 inch of distance, it's actually 4 ounces of resin, which you consider 4 ounces isn't that much one time, but let's say you make 10 of these, that's 40 ounces of resin. That's an extra 2 or 3 casts you could get out of it just by having a good calculation. So now I'm going to mix up my resin, and I'm going to take my calculation. I've got a 16-ounce pour, and I'm dividing it. I'm going to do 1 ounce of black because that's an accent, and then I'm going to evenly divide the 15 ounces by 5 colors, which is 3 ounces per color, so that makes it nice and easy. And what I can do is come in and put my mica in each cup, and I do 2 scoops. So if you're using like a teaspoon, you probably would do 1 full teaspoon. So I'm going to do 2 scoops. And you'll see I'm going to keep these right here with the color. That way I know what is what. And all these are going to look very similar in this interference powder. So they all kind of look white, even though there's red, blue, green, violet, and gold. They all look very similar. Now, one other thing is interference powder is much more powdery than regular mica. So it's a finer grain or granule, and it's almost like if you were ever baking with like baking flour, it kind of feels like that. So you really have to mix it thoroughly and be aware that it could clump on you when you're mixing. All the mica's ready, and I know which one because of their sitting behind. Now I do a couple of things. So I'm going to add 3 ounces to each, and that's 3 ounces of part A and part B. So I'm going to do part A first. And what I like to do, I'm going to put it on the scale and zero it. I'm going to take my part A. If you're not comfortable pouring out of a big jug like this, you can easily get an extra cup and just pour a bunch in there. And it's much easier to pour out of a smaller cup. Now I'm looking for 1.5 ounces each, A and B, to get my 3 ounce total. So I've got my scale zeroed. I'm just going to pour it in here. And I'm going to go slow because I really want to be close and accurate. There we go. And I like to put it in front. And what I'm doing there is my A is in and my B will be when my cup's behind it. So it's just kind of how I keep track of what I've done. And you'll come up with your own system. When you start pouring multiple colors like this, you got to kind of have a little system so you don't get mixed up. It's real easy to forget what you've put what into which cup when you're doing so many. So those are all my A's. I'm gonna get a little more resin here. And again, I'm doing 1.5 ounces of A and 1.5 ounces of B. And it's very important that you zero that scale because you've got your cup, your mica, and your stick in there. It's good to have a little paper towel around to clean up. So you don't want that mica and stick counting for your weight because that would throw off your ratio when you go to mix your part B. All right. So this is the last mica. This is 1.5. Now, I may not have mentioned it, but we're only doing 1 total ounce of the black dye. And the reason is we're only using that as an accent. It's not going to make up a substantial amount of the resin. So if you were counting that as part of your total weight, you'd want to make sure you're not going to use even the whole ounce. So you wouldn't want to count that. So you'd want to add extra to your other cups to make sure that you met the right weights. Okay, so that's my part A. Now, again, as my system, I set the part A completely out of the way. That way I don't accidentally grab it when I'm going to do part B. Now, I'm ready to get this going. So as soon as I add my part B, it's going to start to warm and set the resin off. So I have limited time. So I'm going to move rather quickly here. I've got an extra cup to do my pour, and that just helps me pour it quickly and accurately. So I'm going to zero, make sure I'm at 1.5 per cup. And I'm going to go through and add all the part B's to the cups. And the reason I'm doing that is, and see I put it behind, now I know my B's in there. The reason I'm doing that is I want the temperature to be similar. If I stopped and stirred that first one and then went to the next one, that first one is going to reach temperature much, much quicker. So by doing these all as quick as I can, I'm going to get them as close to each other as possible for temperature. And that'll be important in just a minute when we get to the mixing portion. So I'm going to do a little more there. All right. And it's good to have a digital scale. If you can have it with 2 or 3 digits, it's really helpful. But use what you've got. You don't have to buy special stuff. You just need something that's accurate. I do everything in ounces. Some people do grams, which obviously grams are a finer degree of detail. But when we're doing larger pours and things, it's easier for my brain to use ounces. So that's what I do. Now I didn't put my dye in there, which I can do. So I'm just going to squirt a little dye in here. Now when I'm only doing 1 ounce, I really don't need much. And I'm going to watch the scale to make sure I don't overdo it. But I'm literally just giving it a squirt because black dye is very, very dark. So a little dye goes a long way. But that being said, you don't want this a faint black. You want a thick, rich black. So don't underdo it, but don't go crazy because you could mess up your chemistry of curing. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and start stirring all these. Now with the interference pigments, like I said, they're very powdery. I'm going to give these a quick first stir just to get them mixed up, and then I'm going to let them sit while I stir the others. And what I'm going to look for is the clumps of powder will float to the surface. And then that way I know if I've got stuff to try to mix up more or if I got a good mix. So whenever you're stirring resin, especially with mica or dye, you want to scrape the sides, you want to scrape the bottom, and you want to really thoroughly stir it. Now, it may seem like I'm going quickly, which I am, but I'm going to come back and stir each one of these 2 or 3 times by the time we're done here. So you can see that they all kind of look the same color, but there's just a hint of blue and a hint of gold and a hint of red, and that's the beauty of the interference colors. This one has the hint of gold. So scraping those sides, scraping the bottom, get it stirring, and we'll see how good we did for our first stir. And there's your hint of violet. So it's kind of neat that you can start to see these colors come out. All right, and then the black I already stirred, but I'm going to give it a little more. And there's not much in there. That's only a half an ounce of black. So we'll use that whole half ounce, but that's not much considering the volume of what we're doing. So if we look in here, I don't know how good the camera will pick it up, but there's little clumps. Like there's one little one there and one little one there. Those are the powder. So what I like to do is kind of smash them into the side and try to pop those little powder pockets. And it's just because these are so fine. One thing I'm going to do after my first stir also is I'm going to take the temperature of the first one. So it's 80 degrees. Probably when I mixed them, they were around 76. I could kind of tell you here. Yeah, 76. So just that quickly, they've gone up almost 5 degrees. What I'm looking for these to reach is 95 degrees. So if I was just doing 2 colors, I would mix as soon as the first one hit 95. Since I've got 5 colors, really 6 if you count the black, I'm going to wait till at least half or 95. And that's for color separation. So if you pour them too soon, when the resin is cold or cool, they'll actually blend together and kind of get muddy. If you pour them at 95 plus, they'll generally stay separated. Now 95 is what I use here. It works for me in this temperature and humidity. It may be a little different for what you're doing. So do a little sampling and testing to see what temperature works for you and how many colors you're doing. If you're doing a lot of colors, it's a lot harder, and you got to probably drop that temperature down to give yourself some time. So looking back here, these few, there's no clumps. Okay, here's a good one with some clumps. So those 3 white dots, hopefully they pick up, those are clumps of powder. So I'm just going to kind of smash them into the side and break them loose and then keep stirring. And that's the best I can do with a stick. So do your best to get it really mixed. You can't overmix these. You can certainly undermix them. So that's 2 rounds of mixing. I'm going to check the temp. 85 degrees. So it took 5 stirrings essentially to go up 5 degrees. Now, do you have to keep stirring them? No. But since I'm going to be standing here anyway, I'm going to stir them because I'd rather make sure that my cups are really well stirred. Now see, this one I can already feel the temperature. All right, my temperature's at 90 on the first cup, 89, 86, 86, 84. So that's a good, that kind of shows you 90, 89, 89, 86, 84, how quickly they warm up just in the amount of time it took me to pour part B into the first cup versus the 5th cup. So it happens fairly quickly. When I start to approach my final temperature, I'll give it a final stir. And then if I don't need the stirring stick, I'll get it out of the way. Now you can reuse these stirring sticks. If you have like a HDPE cutting board or something you can set them on there, the resin will cure and it just is a thicker stick. There's no reason to not reuse them, especially because resin casting can be a little wasteful with all the cups and things. So I reuse cups and sticks whenever I can. The paper cups I don't reuse, but the plastic cups that we use a lot, I do. All right, so let me stir this last black one here, and we'll take a temp. 91.5, 91.3, so that one's catching up. 89, 89, 89, so we're getting there. So this will be my last stir, because by the time I'm done, this first one or two should be in the 95 range, which is my target. And if it goes to 96, 97, 98, I'm okay with that. I'm not stuck on 95. That's just my kind of my trigger point to let me know that I am ready to pour. And that's how I can try to keep that color separation. All right. So, and it's a noticeable difference in the cup from the first one to the fifth one when you're stirring these because of that temperature. So we're at 93 here, so we're getting in good shape. Okay. And scrape those sides, scrape the bottom. So this gold is about the only one you can really see the color very plainly. The rest are really subtle. Although the violet, you can kind of see a little bit of the tint. It's kind of cool. All right. Now, I've gotten rid of all the sticks from the mica, but I am keeping the stick in the black dye, and you'll see why in just a sec. We're going to use that as part of the technique. Okay, let's see where we're at. 96, 96, 94, 95, oh, that one jumped ahead, and 93.9. Okay, so real quickly, I'm going to clear some space here, get my resin out of the way, get my stoner out of the way, and I've got my pot rack. Now this rack allows me to do multiple levels if I was doing more than one pour. I'm not, so I've taken the shelf out, and it's just easier to put it into the pressure pot this way. So let's make sure we're ready. 97, 97, 95, 96, 95. So like I said, I wanted 3 over 95. We've got more, so we are good. So I'm going to zoom in here and kind of show you how I'm going to pour this. Now, one thing, actually I'm going to zoom back real quick to show you. So my order, I'm going to keep this order, and I'll show you my way of pouring this. Now figure out your way, but I like the results of this, so I'm going to show you how I do it. So I'm going to take my first cup, and I'm going to pour, and I'm just getting started, so it doesn't really matter. I just need some resin in here. And then I'm going to put this cup right here. Take the next one, kind of do the same thing, maybe fill in the holes a little bit. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. We're just getting it started. We don't want all one color in any one spot. So by doing this, I'm just layering these 5 colors. And then I'm going to introduce some black. So that'll be the main thing. Okay, you see how I've kept them in order? And if you find a pattern of how you like stuff to look based on how you poured it, take notes or try and remember, because you want to be able to repeat that. So I'm going to move my stick out of the way, although I'm not getting rid of it, and I'm going to squeeze down this cup. And what I'm trying to do here is 2 things. I'm trying to create real thin lines or drips. And I can kind of do that by going fast, because those drips actually look really cool in the resin. So now I'm going to take my cups and go reverse of where I was just a second ago. So even though this was my last color, I want to mix it into the same thing. And I like thin lines. Even if I do a lot of them, I like thin lines. And you notice I'm going the same place every time, but I'm trying to get up next to the wall of the mold. And even if I don't get the mold, or even if I get the side of the mold, I'm okay with that. But I try to get it in that order. Now, all right. So it's starting to look cool already, but the real cool factor hasn't started yet. Okay, so my colors are back in order. You see right here. I'm going to do one more drip of black. And like I said, this is very, very subtle. I only have a 1/2 ounce total of black. Oh, that was perfect. So I've got some drips, I've got thin lines. That's exactly what I want. Now, I'm going to start in reverse. This is just me. I go the same color backward and forward, and then I'm going to now take it in reverse, and I'm going to pretty much do everything that's left. So thinly, I'm going to go back and forth and get all of this resin out of this cup. And it's going to be quite a bit because I probably poured 1/3 those first 2 passes, and then that's about 2/3. So that one's done. Now my second to last. That one you can really see the layers, so that's kind of a good example of what I'm trying to do. And the reason I do that is because those colors hopefully will sink into each other. There's a lot of that one. Don't worry if it looks like a lot, it'll be all right. All right. Third. All right. This is going to be a good mix. I can already tell based on how it's laying out. And if you wanted to go sideways or zigzags or whatever, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter because each one is going to be unique anyway, and it kind of just allows you to create something unique. Now, I like doing this in the block mold. If I was making a pen or a knife specific in that knife or pen mold, it would be harder to do this because it's smaller. By giving it this bigger space, it allows me to mix easier. All right, now all the colors are done. I'm going to do one final black thin line. I'm going to go a tiny bit slower. And that's it. Drop in the corner. Now, a lot of times I won't do this, but I'm going to do it with the black. I'm going to kind of trace my pattern, and that will create, it'll kind of drag the black through the resin. I'm being careful not to stir. I'm just dragging. And I always come out in the corner so I don't leave a lot of mixed look to it. Now that is ready to go. It doesn't look like a lot yet. When it cures, it'll look a lot cooler, but you're starting to see, you can see right there, green, blue, red. You can see the gold here. So it's starting to come out. This is gonna look really good. I'm gonna put it on this mold rack. My mold rack, or my pressure pot's ready to go. I'm gonna carefully put this in. Now you don't want to splash it or mix it, so you want to be real careful on how you go in and out with that. Make sure your seal is set. All right. Tighten this down. It's kind of like changing a car tire. You want to alternate bolts. You don't want to do the next bolt in line, so do opposites. Snug it down real nice and firm. All right. I like to shut off the air. And then I'm going to fill this to probably around 40 or 50 pounds. And now my pressure pot is full. It's compressed the air in that mold and in that resin down to where it should be virtually bubble free when I demold it. Alumilite Clear Slow, which is the urethane resin I'm using, has a time of about 2 to 4 hours before I take it out of the pressure pot. And I don't want to use it for about 48 hours. Even though it'll feel hard, it's important to let it sit that 48 hours so that it fully cures. If you use it soon, too soon, it might work and it might seem like everything's okay, but you won't get the polish and the shine that you will after it fully cures. I've waited the 4 hours to demold this, so I'm gonna take it out of the pressure pot. It's not ready to use, but I can show you how it comes out. First, we're going to release the pressure. Once the pressure's out, you can loosen these up. And again, I'm just working in reverse, doing opposites. I'm going to set this out. And there's my block. Let's go ahead and pop this out. On this mold, this is a Maker Select mold. You pop the back off and give it a little air pressure, and it pops it right out. So there's the block. It's kind of interesting because the block doesn't look like a whole lot right now. And I'll show you an example. Very similar cast. Doesn't look like much on the back or the front. But when you cut these open, you get that beautiful abalone look. It's been a couple days and I was able to make a couple of things, and I wanted to show you how these casts turned out. So I was going to make a pen, but I actually decided to just round this. I'm going to hang it in the store for a display, but I did go ahead and we did a knife handle out of the abalone cast, and it looks just stunning. This is really cool material, and you can see it gives a nice shine. This round one I turned on the lathe. I sanded with 600 and 800 grit sandpaper, and then I polished with Zona paper, and you can see the shine is just really nice. And then the knife handle, we attached it with a 2-part epoxy to the metal. There are 2 pins, even though you can only see the one because that one's kind of hidden. It's kind of neat. And then we sanded up to 800 after shaping, and then I buffed it on the buffing wheel, and it looks just fabulous. So these are just a couple of examples of what you can make. This ghost color stuff can be a little tricky, but just remember the key is you need a dark element to set it off. So have fun, experiment with it, try different things. Don't be afraid to try something that you've never seen before because you'll get really good results. I hope you had fun watching this, and I hope you try this stuff. If you did like this, please like and subscribe to the channel and like the video. Make a comment. Tell us what you've made. It's fun to hear what people are doing with this stuff. But thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.